What is going on, beautiful people? It is late January and it is a nasty day in my area right now. It's in the lower 40s. It's very dark and cloudy, and it's raining. Just cold rain. You know, one thing I really don't like about my area is that it still gets cold enough to be uncomfortable and negatively affect the fishing, but it is often, the conditions do not often align for us to actually get any kind of significant wintry precipitation. And I used to kind of like snow when I was a kid, so it would be kind of nice to get some from time to time, at least like a couple of decent storms per season, but that's just not how it goes here. A lot of just cold rain and maybe a little bit of ice or something from time to time, but I digress. So today it's nasty. Not going to be going out and doing any fishing today. But I wanted to sit down and, talk a little bit. This is a YouTube channel that is primarily focused on fishing from the bank, fishing on foot, from the shore. So I really wanted to, make a quick video and talk about my top 5 tips for bank fishing, for fishing from the bank. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the concept of stealth when you're fishing from the bank. I often see in my videos, I tend to wear natural colors, my outfits for the most part, lots of green or tan, sometimes camouflage, or at the very least it'll be, muted tones, gray, dark blue, black, things that aren't really going to stand out a whole lot. And, something that you should realize is that if you can see a fish, then there's a good chance that they can see you too. Predatory fish, bass, pickerel, panfish, really any kind of predatory fish tend to have pretty good eyesight, so they can see you from pretty far away. And just wearing those natural tones will, just decrease the chance that those fish are going to see you quite as easily. And another thing to consider is just the general noise level that you're making, and also when you're coming up on a body of water, it's a good idea to maybe stand like 10 to 15 feet back at first when you're making those first few casts, on the off chance that there's some fish kind of sitting along that bank where you're about to walk up. Because if you walk up right to the edge and there are fish there, they're going to swim off. They're going to feel those vibrations of your feet walking up. They're going to see you, and you'll have potentially missed some fish there. The second tip is a little more specific, and it has to do with casting. So a lot of people, I think, who are new to fishing, and you kind of hand them a rod and everything, they're often tempted to just cast straight out, as far, to get the bait or the lure as far away from the bank as possible, out into the middle of the river or the lake or wherever you are. And they tend to just kind of make that same cast over and over. And really, if you're fishing from the bank, you really want to, follow a concept that I like to call fan casting. So that's where, you're trying to be efficient and cover as much water as you can from a given spot. So, you can make a couple of those casts straight out, sure, but also make some at like a, 45-degree angle from the bank. And then also try to make a few that are almost parallel to the bank that just land the lure, 5-10 feet off the bank, further up to your right or left. And, there are times when, those long casts in the middle will catch you some fish. It definitely does happen. But a lot of the time, those horizontal casts are actually going to be, your higher percentage casts when there are, when there's a significant population of fish moving shallow in the body of water where you are. those casts where you're retrieving near the bank, you're going to have, you're more likely to present the lure to a greater number of fish than when you're just casting out in the middle. Tip number 3 has to do with lures. If you're fishing with lures, which is what I usually do, just thinking about a lure selection here. So there are certain lures that you probably won't want to use from the bank. Things like like a big flutter spoon or like a deep diving crankbait. Like if you're in a shallow area, it really doesn't make sense to have those types of lures on your line. Those lures are really meant more for fishing in deeper water primarily. So be thoughtful about that. Just get a good understanding of what a lure does. Does it dive? How the weight of the lure is also important. You really don't want to use a whole lot of really heavy, like 1 ounce lures or something when you're just freshwater bank fishing. A lot of times, a good place to start, especially if you're fishing for bass, is to try to find some weedless rigs and lures that you can use. And this you're going to be casting towards cover a lot, as you should be. That's a big part of freshwater fishing is finding structure that might be holding fish and casting to them. So having a weedless lure is going to decrease your chance of getting hung up. It's harder to get your lures back when you're on the bank versus in a boat. So you really want to try to minimize your snags if at all possible. So some examples here, a Texas rig is a classic lure for bank fishing, a classic rig for bank fishing. Extremely versatile, and your lure is going to be able to get out of those snags, out of the sticks and the rocks and the logs and whatever else is down there more often than not when you have a weedless setup like that. Another thing has to do with lure size. I think a lot of lures that are designed, especially for bass, are really for the guy. The sizes are for the guy that's out on the big bass boat, on a big reservoir somewhere. And sometimes if you're fishing like a small pond or a creek or something like that, those bigger lures are going to be too, they're not going to imitate the forage that the bass are often going to be keyed up on in smaller bodies of water. So this is part of the reason why I like to fish with lighter gear, ultralight and light rods and reels, because it allows you to kind of use those lighter lures a little more effectively, those smaller lures. And this is going to increase your chance of catching a wider variety of species as well, and a larger number of fish. So yeah, match the size of your bait to the situation. Look for bait fish themselves, see what size they seem to be. And if you're fishing a smaller pond or something, maybe go with that lighter lure or that lighter setup. The fourth tip is just be willing to get out there and explore on foot. You'll be surprised what you can find out there. And an advantage of fishing from the bank is that you can fish places that people with boats can't access necessarily all the time. But it does sometimes take a little work to find those places. So be willing to go out on Google Maps and look for spots. Now, obviously, you don't want to trespass or anything like that. So try to get permission or just be aware of where you're going and what you're doing in a legal sense. Get your fitness up. Be prepared to go through some rougher areas, perhaps. Trails or forests or what have you, to get to some of those hidden places where the fish are less likely to be pressured, and it's going to increase your chance of catching a lot of fish, for sure, if you're able to do that. And that also means being willing to risk some mud or something like that. I always wear kind of muck boots when I go fishing from the bank, and that really allows you to kind of get out. If you really need to get out into the water and get a different angle, just like a foot or so out, a different casting angle or just a little more distance. And it also allows you to sort of just, pass over, mucky areas or muddy spots or on the way to wherever you're going to fish. So, being prepared in that way, being willing to go off the beaten path, while it is, can be a little more strenuous, pay off in the long run with more fish catches. So the final tip that I wanted to touch on in this video has to do with, covering water and choosing your fishing spot. So another thing I think I see a lot of beginners do is kind of set up in one area and just stay in that area for 30 minutes or an hour and just keep on casting and casting. And if you're really, if you're fishing with natural baits or live bait, that's one thing. It does kind of make more sense to sort of stay in one spot for 20 or 30 minutes and kind of let the fish try to come to you, because those techniques are based more on the scent that the bait is putting out. If it's something dead or if it's like a prepared bait. If you're fishing with lures, I would say, if I'm in a spot and I don't get a bite within 10 or 15 minutes or don't catch a fish within that time frame, it's time to move on. So when in doubt, move about, particularly if you are fishing with artificial lures. Lures are all about, trying to provoke the most aggressive fish in the given area to eat, to attack. Anyway, these are my 5 tips for better fishing from the bank. So, if you're a bank angler, this one's for you. I hope you learned something from this video. I hope you're going to be able to get out there and catch more fish from the bank. If you finished watching this video, then I'm assuming you are a bank angler yourself. If you haven't already, you should subscribe to the channel. I've got weekly fishing videos dropping here on Cross Country Bank Angler, and you don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.